Yeah, so let's talk about portfolio. So, well, actually, before that, a little bit about me, so that I'm not like this stranger just coming in on a Saturday morning. So I've been a senior product designer for a couple of years. My most recent position was at this company called 𝗕𝗂𝗿𝗍𝗀. It's a biotech company based in Boston, Massachusetts. So what 𝗕𝗂 does is that it basically, it's a contract research organization. So it runs like R&D projects for clients. So we have clients like from like agriculture, pharma, food, cosmetics industries. So 𝗕𝗂 specializes in cell engineering. So like, for example, we would help a client find like, the best, I don't know, like nitrogen fixing bacteria strains. Or like in the, when Moderna developed their like mRNA vaccine, like 𝗕𝗂 helped with some of the process optimization for like producing that vaccine. Like there are some enzymes needed as part of the process. So what does a product designer do here? 𝗕𝗂 has a lot of scientists, and then they need to use a variety of different tools, softwares. So that's like that's the 𝗕𝗂 office here in Boston. That's our team. Well, we're missing like 2 other designers, but we help like scientists do their work more efficiently, more effectively, help like the company scale the software, so that scientists can do their work better. So we work on like internal tools. And for me, my focus has been on in the lab automation area. So if you look at this picture in the back, there's the lab. When scientists do their work in the lab, they use like hand pipette at their bench, but sometimes, well, we hope they could use more of like the more automated instruments, so that it increase their like productivity, scalability, and when they're doing that, there's a software portion. So for example, like that's a collection of lab automation software, and then there's the little like screen monitor over here, and then scientists will use a variety of different softwares. So that's what I've been working on the past 2 years. So if anyone's talk about like biotech, I don't know, working on internal tools, enterprise software, we can do that later. Prior to that, I was at a startup called 𝗣cie𝗄𝗿𝗍. So 𝗣cie𝗄𝗍 provides professional coaching services to companies, and then companies offer that to their people sometimes as like a talent development option, or sometimes just as a perk. So this is startup. I joined as their founding designer. I was there for like 6-7 years. So completely different from 𝗕𝗂, but it was fun, like doing product design in a startup. So again, open to talk about that. Outside of, a little bit more about myself. Outside of work, I was born and grew up in Hangzhou, China. So that's where it is. And then I moved to Boston about like 14, 15 years ago. First came to like this college called Mt. Holyoke in the middle of nowhere. And then I got my master's degree at Harvard Grad School of Education. That's where I discovered product design, coming from like a psychology major. And I think that's really when like people started to talk about product design and UX, and I was like, that's a great opportunity for me, or like a path for me. When I'm not working, yay, someone from Hangzhou, hi. When I'm not working, I like spend time with puppies and then camping. I also do mentoring on the side. That's how Julius and I met from like ADP list. I also like to cheering for Boston Celtics. That's their championship parade just the past summer. Okay, enough about me. Let's talk about portfolio. Okay, so I think what's interesting was that I think a lot of designers just have this very complicated feelings towards portfolio. And I think I got that from like, when I talk to like, I don't know, folks who are just starting their like school program in product design, all the way to even my manager at work, who's been in this field for like 20 years. And then he's like, I need to update my portfolio. And what's really funny was that I don't think I've ever met a single person or a single designer who's like, I love working on my portfolio, right? Like we've seen designers who got like very passionate about like other type of design work, but I've never heard anyone saying like, I love working on portfolio. But what's even worse is that despite all of that, I think maybe a lot of people here, think about this all the time, probably spending a lot of time on this. I've heard people who's like, I hate working on portfolio, but like I come back to it, whenever I have time. So, like interesting experience, feelings or relationship, whatever, with UX portfolio. And what's even funny was that I actually didn't have my portfolio site really up until recently, because I started to look for like new opportunities, and then I was like, okay, I need a portfolio site. I mean, I did have like case studies that I can talk about and I share with people in the past, but not really like a portfolio site. So I've been, really starting to work on this from like scratch the past few months. So that's why when Julia posted about this, I was like, yeah, I could, I've been working on this for a while. I'm happy to talk about, what I've learned, what I've thought of, things I've heard of that I, discuss with others and then form opinions on. I wouldn't say that I have a right way of doing portfolio that I can teach. I don't really think that exists. But there are just a few things I can share and then hope to discuss with you all. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this idea of like being authentic and like really own this authenticity when it comes to developing portfolios. So it's really about like that mental sort of like mindset, which I think really worked for me when it comes to developing portfolio. It might sound a little bit of cliche, but I really do think this is like, I should say like one of the better long-term winning strategy when it comes to portfolio. Because let's say like, I think like today, if you go onto LinkedIn and then if just like, scrolling through posts about portfolio, you're going to see this type of conflicting or different opinions everywhere about like any possible decisions you could make about portfolio, right? Like how long should it be? Do you talk about, do you focus more on like final results, final products, or like process? I think it's a very subjective topic. And then, sorry, I got distracted by the comment. It's a very subjective topic. And then people, depending on who you are, what companies you're from, like as a hiring designer on the other side, what kind of like the past experience about this hiring, hiring manager had in the past, like all of that came to play into like what kind of portfolio site this person prefers or sees as valuable. So I personally found it's almost an impossible task to kind of like develop your portfolio focusing on sort of like tailoring to other people's preferences and opinions. I'm not saying like you shouldn't listen to other people's feedback, but at the end of the day, like if you focus really on just like trying to show yourself, like your story, your journey as a designer in your portfolio, like to me, that's really the long-term strategy, because otherwise you're just going to be like changing, updating your portfolio all the time based on what you've seen or heard on a specific time or like a post. And like if you can embrace that authenticity and then just like create that narrative that like that complete cohesive narrative about your design story, design journey, that actually increase the likelihood of finding that perfect match for you. I would assume a lot of people here like have portfolio for the purpose of like looking for a job. I think some people have their portfolio up just for online presence and then like kind of like almost like personal branding. And then I think if that's the case, this is even more relevant. Also, right, like it helps you stand out. I've got a lot of questions from when I was mentoring other people asking about like, how do I make my portfolio stand out? I think one of the things that probably apply to a lot of people is just by telling a good story. Like you have your own story that nobody else has. It's something that makes you stand out, even without you having to like polishing anything or like even kind of like quote unquote like fake anything. I know that some people try to do that. Like it is a story that you've had, you've gone through your past experience that really make you stand out. And again, for a lot of people, it's easier to be the best version of yourself if you're not like trying to like perform anything. You're not trying to like, be someone else. And last but not least, like working on portfolio is a long process. I think like you need to feel good about it in order to like have that resilience and have that sort of like energy to persist through this like sort of like continuous kind of working on portfolio. You want to feel like confident, feeling good, feeling proud about what you're doing to kind of like help you get through this. Again, like very long process. You're gonna get like feedback. You're gonna hear people like pointing out things you might want to change in the portfolio. I think again, for a lot of people, when it comes to talking about themselves, talking about like what they've done in the past, like telling the story of their journey, like that's usually how people feel a little bit better about themselves. So I just want to put it out there. I think this is like a good strategy to have, like especially if you think of long term. Again, like happy to discuss when we get to that portion. But let's go to a little bit more specific. So, when we're talking about like authenticity, I want to say that like portfolio is a place where like I think it should really about you, about yourself. I know this is hard for a lot of designers, at least for me, because I think we've been trained to like sort of take ourselves, like our own like preferences, our ego, like out of the design process when it comes to work, right? Like we've been, we learned that like the feedback, the insights, the inputs from users or users particularly are more important in a lot of like design decisions. Like, some, we know that we should also listen to stakeholders, but I think portfolio is really about yourself. So it is, your value, like your brand, you should try to like highlight and then make sure you communicate in the portfolio. So for example, this is a screenshot from mine. So this first bullet point, a lot of times like people ask about this, I guess like when it comes to the homepage and then the About Me section on your portfolio. I'm not saying like this is like a perfect paragraph, but what I can say is that like I intentionally chose this words in the sense that like I make sure that, when I say I'm a holistic product designer, like I can highlight those in my in like the selection of my case studies, in the way that I tell my stories in those case studies. Those are the things that I also highlight, and I feel good about like when I talking about them when I was in an interview. So again, you can see this kind of like a cohesive story. Same about like the About Me page. Again, I got that questions a lot. Like, what do I put in my About Me page? Like, how do I make myself like stand out in this About Me page? I've tried the methods, like, when I look at others' portfolio, I know everyone looks at other people's portfolio. Like people put on, photos of their like traveling, like doing arts and like, I don't know, all these like personal stuff. I tried that approach and I didn't feel like those like really represent who I am as a professional. Like my personal preference is to separate myself, like I guess like separate the designer and then like the non-working side of me. But again, like people can take their own approach. But for me, I decided to kind of like emphasize on sort of like the collaboration, the teams that I have, like the people that I've worked with, that part of that aspect, I guess, like of me being a product designer. So, this is like the very first top section of my About Me page. I chose that again because this is really something that mattered to me. And once again, I talk about these in my, when I have conversation with recruiters and interviewers. So again, like those value, like what matters to your brand, like all of that should come in like a cohesive kind of like story. It's also about your sort of like design practice and principles. For that, I'm talking about like more than just, you know, choosing your found colors, like all the aesthetic part of the things, but also, you know, it's like decisions like, for example, right, do I show like interactive prototypes or static images at the beginning of the case study as a way to present my final solutions? You know, is my case study like text heavy or visual? Again, you're gonna find all kinds of different opinions if you go onto LinkedIn. I think these are kind of the decisions you should say, like, yeah, like I prefer this. This is my design. Like, this is my preferred design practice. This is my best way of telling the story. Like, I think, again, this is more about like your own choice. And same with storytelling. And then I really highlighted the storytelling word. I think at the end of the day, that's what like portfolio is all about. So, right, like your way, your story. So story over framework or templates. Authenticity and being real over perfect. I'm not saying like frameworks or templates are bad, but like prioritize your story over those. Means like if in your specific story, like based on your story, the plot in your story, like all the twists, challenges, like deviation, like especially when there are deviations from the template, I would say like definitely prioritize those over like, oh, I need to follow like the exact template. Again, that's your way of, you know, standing out. Like you don't even need to do anything else. Like just by having gone through, I don't know, like this particular challenge working with the stakeholders, or like, oh, this deadline changed in my project. Like you already have something unique that makes you different from others. And right, like same with this second bullet point here, like perfect case studies just almost never happen in the real world. Like all the priority shifts, like budget changes, like feature never passed, like MVP version, all of that. Like those are what hiring managers will be curious, because that's gonna happen like in the real job. And then you know, when you highlight those kind of like unexpected things, and then they become like a part of your story, and then also show how you overcome them, how you address them, how you bring the story back to like the finish line. This really keeps your story like interesting and unique and real. So in my opinion, that actually makes it a better case study. So this is part of one of my case study. Prior to that, so this is step 3. So step 2 was I can't remember. Step 2 is the part where we identify problems, or like problem statement. So normally, right, like if you follow like a template, after that it will be, all right, here we have problems, let's explore ideas. But this pivot actually happened, and I struggled, like, you know, in the previous versions of this. There's so many previous versions of this. We're like, oh, should I like use more of like a standard language, like from like a process, so that it's easier for I don't know, whoever is reading it to skim through. But in the end, I decided that you know, this is a really important part of the story. We went through a lot of conversation. There are a lot of like difficult moments in order to like pivot and then use more of like a linear approach. So deviation from the more of like a traditional kind of like design process. It's a really important part of my story. So I decided to highlight that. And then what happened was that, you know, not everyone is going to see it as valuable as I do, but for those who are, you know, for example, like a hiring manager from like a startup, they're looking for someone who can be more flexible. They will be interested in this part of the story. And then this, you know, could lead to like interesting conversation. So I also wanted to touch on this like very controversial question, which is like, how long should my case study be? I feel like this is like the ultimate question that nobody really has a good answer to. So I'm just gonna share my thoughts. Again, you're gonna see that people prefer longer or shorter versions. I really do think it's more of a preference than opinions. I am in the longer portfolio side camp. My case studies are on the longer side, because I feel like, one is that sometimes you work on like more complex projects, it's inevitably long. And second, if you really want to do a good job of telling a story, it's very hard to do in a very it's harder to do. I don't think it's impossible. Like it's harder to do in a condensed version. I also think it's, rather than talking about like the lens, like how many words are, you know, in your case study, it's also about like making it easy to skim and scroll. That's actually what a lot of like recruiters or hiring managers' primary behavior when they are on your portfolio site is that they skim through things. They scroll through and then they look for particular things that they're looking for. So without like cutting words, I think there are some other things you can do to make your portfolio more skimmable or scrollable. For example, like having a proper content hierarchy. So using, you know, headings, labels, different fonts, all of that, like the things that you know as a product designer. Also try to use like, you know, UI components that makes navigation easier. So for example, in this case study, like look at how small this is. Like it's a pretty long case study, so you're gonna have to scroll a lot to the end. But because of the content, table of contents here on the site, it's interactive. So, you know, for me, when I'm looking at this, like how long it is become less of a concern because I can easily navigate to the part of the story that I'm more interested in. So things like that, focus more on like the experience of skimming through or scrolling a portfolio rather than like the exact length. I think it's also interesting to like think about, right, like put your designer hat on because you're essentially designing your portfolio. Like who are the different personas on your portfolio? So like I'm trying to like kind of do my persona work here. These were like real quotes I've experienced during my job search process. So the first one is coming from a hiring manager. She was like, oh, we received like 800 applications within 10 minutes posting the job. So we had to close the job posting. And then she went on talking about like, as a result, I only had like, I don't know, 2 minutes per case study because I really need to like cut down the number of participants going to the next round. I also met someone, so Jorge was my dear colleague at Ginkgo. Like he referred me to another company. So I talked to this hiring manager, and then this hiring manager was like, you know, because Jorge referred you, and I really trust him because, you know, I've worked with Jorge for years. So we then had a very in-depth discussion about a portfolio case study. So what I'm trying to say here is that you're going to have like different kind of personas on your portfolio. So I found sometimes it's helpful to think of them or like categorize them into like two main categories. The first category, I call them like casual skimmers. So they could be your recruiters. They could be like hiring managers who just kind of know you for the very first time. Right, their main behavior will be like skimming through things, scrolling through, looking for keywords, looking for certain, I don't know, artifacts or certain like elements in your case study that they care about. You might also have a second category of persona, which I call them serious readers. So they might be this hiring manager who's a friend of, like we have like mutual connections or mutual friends, or it could be that like you're in the later stage of the interview process, and then your future teammates, they might have a much higher interest in your work, your experience compared to like recruiters or like hiring managers, you know, when you just meet them for the first time. They might be interested in your case study a lot more. They might be interested in all the details, all the like small things, your process, your like artifacts showing like you know, just like kind of steps in between. So another way to think about this problem is actually to think of, you know, instead of like asking and trying to figure out like how long the case study should be, think about like, you know, how might we create different experiences for different personas. So again, I found this sometimes becomes a lot easier question for a lot of designers to solve than just kind of like trying to bend their hat and then figure out like the perfect lens. I think there are a couple ways to handle this, and I'm just going to share a couple that I think makes sense to me. Sometimes people create different versions. So for example, here, this person is saying like, this is a shorter version, only 5-minute read. might be long still for in some people's opinion, but there is a longer version, like a full version. And then look at this person also use like table. I like this approach. I'm actually considering like using this for my own portfolio. However, the downside of this is that just increase the maintenance, the effort of maintenance. Like if you update something, you're gonna have to update both versions and then you have to keep them consistent. So it's slightly more higher effort, I suppose. But that's one way of doing that. Do I have a different way to show this? Yeah, teaser versus full. Oh yeah, the other way of kind of like thinking about solving this problem is just trying to like think of like, you know, if there are other ways to provide a good experience for your different personas outside of sort of like managing the lens or the viewing experience of your case study. So for example, right, like a good tagline of this, give readers a why, like they should or should not click into this. Again, like it's okay for some of your case study to not be the interest of certain people, and then that's fine, because you know you might not even want to work, you know, in that specific industry or their companies anyways. So like telling them, like giving them hints, pointers, be like what this is about, right? Like platform. I could probably find better examples, but like I think sometimes like people do a good job of like using like keywords to kind of like highlight what this portfolio is about. So again, that's helpful for those like casual like skimmers. Be like, okay, like I am going to click into this, or this is not my interest. Also, like in terms of the tagline, right? Like highlight results, highlight like what have you achieved by doing this portfolio. So again, for those more of like casual readers, that gives them pointers of like, do I need to spend time even going into it? So, oh yeah, I do have like other examples where like people highlighted, like use keywords to say what this project is about. But I like the previous one in terms of the tagline of like really highlighting, focusing on the results at this level of sort of like information hierarchy. Yeah, okay, last point on this. Regardless which approach you took, what's always important is probably like these elements. So make sure that, you know, even for your shortest version, you clearly display those information. Again, length, how you're going to approach the length, how you're going to design the experience. A lot of it is personal preference, but I think these are like really, you know, what everyone's going to look for, regardless. All right. I'm going to try to go through the rest quicker. My other point about like portfolios, like I think, again, this is not something unique that I kind of come up with, but this really resonate with me, right? Like working in a portfolio as if you're building your own product brand. So put your entrepreneur hat on, like not only just a designer. I think that's important. You're going to be the marketer for your own brand, your PM, right? You're going to have to manage like which part of the features or which part of your portfolio you're going to build first versus next, like which one is, you know, the prioritization, all of that. As the sales, so think about like all the messaging, right? Like the branding, all of that. Just put that entrepreneur hat on, and particularly, right, like leverage your product and design expertise. Like leverage all the things you've learned from like school programs, boot camps, your workplace. Apply them to working on your portfolio. So right, keep a balance between your vision, right? So all the things we've talked about before, like focusing on your value, like what you believe is the right way. And user feedback. You're gonna get a lot of feedback on your portfolio. The more you show it to people, which you should be doing, but you're gonna get a lot of feedback. So like, how do you handle sort of like sometimes conflicting different feedback versus the vision of the product? Again, I think, you know, you're gonna run into this a lot in your real job. So, you know, use what you learned there, apply it to your portfolio as well. Do the research, right? Do the competitor analysis. For example, like find a designer from the company that you want to work on and then check out like their portfolio. Now, keep in mind, sometimes they got hired has nothing to do with their portfolio. The whole job search thing, portfolio review, all of that, it's a game of like imbalanced information. You're gonna have like very little information compared to people on the other side, but you can at least take a look at sort of like, you know, where they're at in terms of their design expertise, what kind of experience they had, what do they like highlight in their case studies. Sometimes you get information from there. I think ask whys, again, like you do this, you should be doing this a lot in your product design process, but I think it's very important for portfolio, especially when you handle your feedback. Again, depending on who you talk to, they're gonna give you specific feedback based on, as a result of their experience of the situation they're in. So you wanted to ask, try to figure out like why they give you specific feedback. Sometimes you're gonna find out like they prefer certain things from a portfolio is very specific to that role that they're trying to fill. Like they're trying to fill someone who has like design system experience. So they're gonna look for that specific in your portfolio. And whether or not you have it, whether or not it's a good thing you have it, sometimes it's separate from like what they're looking for. So it's very important to kind of like process that feedback. And oftentimes I think like asking why they give specific feedback, like the rationale behind it, you know, plays a really important role here. Sometimes they're gonna give feedback based on like their past experience. Like I've run into someone who had like all their experience in like B2B like context. So they're gonna focus on specific things that are important in the B2B kind of like product design world. So if that's not what you're like pursuing, like if that's not the place you want to be in the future, you know, then you know like how you're gonna process the feedback from that particular person. Right, gather data and continuous iteration. I think myself is the good example for this, which I didn't really start my portfolio site until like the past few months. So I wish I could start them earlier. So I read somewhere like, you know, having the mindset of treating your portfolio as your work journal. So whenever you're done with the project, you know, try to update your portfolio a little bit. So it might make the overall process a little bit easier. The other thing I want to highlight, check out some basic UX list. So, you know, if you have a typo in your portfolio case study, it's not gonna, I don't think people are gonna like reject you immediately because of that. But on the other hand, I've also met folks, for example, they're looking for some, you know, they have it in their job description. It's like, oh, we want someone who has experience in accessibility. And they just randomly check your portfolio site images. Do they have alt text? Like if you don't, you know, you're putting yourself in a less advantaged position. So things like that. Yeah, like we talked about this, getting feedback to the right people. Share it to the right people. I meant that I think peer group like settings like this is wonderful. Also try to get feedback from like hiring managers as much as you can. I think they provide like very relevant feedback, even if they're not like hiring like your direct hiring managers. For people with other experience, yeah, just kind of keep in mind of like where their feedback, where their preferences and opinions come from. I think that's the most important. What else do I have to share? Yeah, generally speaking, diversify your work. But if you really do want to position yourself in a specific like niche, I don't know, market, or like you want to just like really go deep into one specific kind of like area, then that doesn't like really apply. But I think for most folks, diversifying the work is probably better things to do. Decision making, right? Like there are some parts of the portfolio I think you can make like quicker, more decisive decisions, where for certain things you want to take your time to do that. This is a great book about like quick and slow decision making, which I think beneficial, like even outside of portfolio. Yeah, like for me, the whole process of working on the portfolio has also been like a great opportunity for learning and self-development. Like I learned a lot more about like as a designer, what are my strengths and then like areas of improvement. Like technical stuff, I also learned, for example, like I've never done like website design in the past. Now I learned a bunch of things about like, oh, how, like what kind of images you should use to make sure it's high quality, but also like, you know, your site doesn't load like super slow, a lot, like those kind of things. It's like, okay, great, like learning opportunities along the way. Yeah, also self-awareness, like what, you know, sometimes even beyond like technical skills as a designer, you know, things that make you like insecure. I know a lot of people have trouble with like perfection, or like showing, you know, in progress work to people. So, you know, just kind of positively viewing this as kind of like a learning and self-development experience. Yeah, lastly, I just want to point out, in my opinion, like what I think a portfolio should not be. It's not a thing that can make everyone happy. It's just impossible. As a result, you really shouldn't be trying to do everything in your portfolio. I've seen people, you know, who, you know, let's say like you spend an hour looking at other like wonderful portfolios. You're like, oh, this person have amazing like animation skills. Like this person has this like really crazy study. Like I'm gonna try to do all of this on mine. You know, you're just gonna end up like a portfolio that's, again, going back to the main topic, like that's not who you are, and then you're never gonna be as good as that person if you're trying to be someone else. Like, if that makes sense. Yeah, and then don't, you know, try not to be driven by a lot of those like feelings. And then again, like sometimes, right, looking at how other people are doing their portfolios, looking at like opinions on LinkedIn, talking about like, oh, well, you're missing your portfolio, like you're not doing the 6 things in your portfolio. Just, you know, it's helpful to kind of like I guess like get access to those kind of thoughts and opinions, but like don't make them become a source of, you know, fear or anxiety and like that kind of emotions, I guess, energy. Yeah, so that's it. Right, like embrace your authenticity. So this is more of like mentally do that. And then when it comes to like technical strategies, right, like really treat it as developing your own product and brand. And then your portfolio can become a powerful reflection of your unique story and design journey. So that's what I learned after working on my portfolio for a few months. And then I think my relationship with portfolio is improving. So I hope that that's true for you guys as well. All right, I'll stop talking and then, yeah, happy to answer any questions in the discussion.
Thank you so much, Han. Yeah, love it. And I feel like this is like, again, another different approach and a different point of view of how to do it. Last week when we were talking with Natalia, she gave us like so specific kind of, if you're applying for X or Y and Z, this is what you should look like. So I feel like I love that we're getting different point of views that I feel like it could be hard for people to try to decide where to go.
Yeah.
But I go back to the beginning of what you were saying, and it's something that we have tried to really emphasize in the last 5 weeks now. It is who you are, what are your strengths, what are your values, focus on that and put all that energy in your portfolio of like your uniqueness, and the rest kind of will fall into place. But I wanted to talk a little bit. I've seen, if anyone have questions, please do put your hand up, but I will give you some space. I would love to talk about that scheme, yes, and I feel like this is really important and powerful nowadays. And I feel like as you were talking about a portfolio, let's say like maybe a couple of years ago, and what it is now, maybe even 5 or like between 5 to 2, what is now is there is so many designers going in, there is so many people applying for a job that's why having a portfolio that is skinnable is so powerful. So what will you say that are the most, maybe 1 or 2 things for to have a portfolio that is skimmable? Is that like a word?
Yeah, I think we all get what it is. Yeah, it's a word. Yeah, 1 or 2 things to make it skinnable. I think the top section is probably very important for your case study. A lot of times, if you do have like those web tracking tools implemented on your portfolio, you're gonna see that people like stop. I think that applies to just kind of generally like speaking the web browsing behavior. Like people stop at certain lengths. So your top section is probably where like it attracts most attention, and then also most importantly, like that gives reader a direction of like should they keep scrolling or skim through. So, right, like there are a couple of things I think are important, regardless of how long your portfolio is. The problem, what kind of problem this whole work effort is trying to solve, like what kind of challenges is trying to help address, and your final solutions, and then results. So like I think keeping those like really highlighted at the top section of your case study, I think that's like one of the most helpful thing you can do. And I would say the other thing to make it scannable is, again, like use those like almost like UX heuristics or best practices, right? Make sure you're not like switching your layout too often, so it gives you like an easy experience for people to skim through, and then they know where to look for your like headings or titles for your subsections, so they know like, oh, if I'm someone who really care about process, then I know like here, these 5 sections are about process, I'm going to take a closer look. But if I'm someone who preferred to just jump into the final solution, let's say you have it at the end of your case study, then at least I know that by looking at the headings, I can skim through the middle section and just go to the end of it. So, if it's a story that's interesting enough, even if this person have to scroll through a couple of times, I don't think it's a big deal. I found the table of contents, like that UI component, to be helpful. But I do find sometimes, I guess, like depending on how you implement it, sometimes it makes your page like load slower. So it's something to keep in mind.
And I feel like this is a great one to go into Vivek's second question, that what are some key elements every portfolio would include regardless of the designer's level of experience?
Yeah, I think the selection of your case studies tells a lot about like who you are as a designer. And when you go into a specific case study page, Vivek, like the things that I talked earlier, again, right, like problem, solution, result. I think that's like, if you have to take other things out, like I will leave them at the end of the list. What else? I think those are most important. Like when you're showcase, like, because I think a lot of people's portfolio fall into the structure of like, you have a page where you list your case studies. Again, like make it easier for your reader to know like what these case studies are. Is it like a mobile app UX design project? Is it a UX research project? Is it like a, I don't know, VR design, whatever, I'm making it up. Is this B2C or B2B? Is this like a SaaS? Is it enterprise software design, UX strategy? Like make it as like, think about your reader's experience, right? Like they have limited time on that page specifically, and if they can know, like, should they click into it? I think that's also important. I know that sometimes people spend a lot of creative energy on like the landing page and then the About Me page. My personal preference is to spend more effort on the stories, but that's just my personal preference.
I want to put two questions here together. Vivek's question that it says, how can I make my portfolio reflect my authentic self while still meeting industry expectations? And I want to talk about just the point that you mentioned, and it's something that you show in your presentation that is, I feel like you were saying that you're a holistic designer, yes? And how these, let's say, wording of who you are and reflection of your strengths reflects on the case studies. And I feel like this has to do a lot with the authentic self. And again, another thing that you mentioned is like, oh, I'm all about accessibility, and then you are not putting out text on your images, or you are not checking costume in your design. So it's like, is this really reflecting who you are and your strengths, or you just trying to use some fussy words into it? So, and I feel like these two things are really important. It's like, who is your authentic self? You need to be sure about this. And this goes into a lot of self-reflection and thinking your strengths and everything. And how you do it in your portfolio. I know I throw a lot in here. Let
me try to answer all of what you said. So the first thing I wanted to address, so you were asking, all right, like take my own portfolio or like that screenshot example. When I say holistic, I mean that I work on design, research, I work on like process, system, and even strategy. So that's really what I mean. So that's reflected one in the way that I selected my case studies. So I made sure that I diversify my case study selections covering those different topics. Now, you could be someone else who's like, I wanted to diversify I'm really making this up, like visual, like UI design skills. So like I have a project speaking about like my web design, like UI, and then like mobile, and then I don't know, like VR, like, but all of this focusing on like really nice, stunning, like visual design. So it's like, if you say that in your like landing page, kind of be like, this is who I am. And then you got to have things to back it up. Like that makes it a cohesive story. So for me, it's the selection of the project. And in the way that I tell my story, I make sure that I emphasis on, like, for example, when I work on this like end-to-end UX project, I not only just like do the design and the research, I also like try to, I make sure that I talk about like I created like a UX strategy. Like I make sure I talk about like I developed things that improve like the overall process or system. Like I make sure that I have evidence almost to say that I am like a system thinker. So things like that. I don't know if that answers your question. And then to Vic's point, like how do I make my portfolio reflect my authentic self while still meeting industry expectations? I guess I wanted to throw this question back to you. Like, what about something in your portfolio that that might not meet industry expectations, and then but like that's I guess like reflect your authentic self? Because I think, like I guess I'll leave it like this. Like what do you feel like it's not meeting both?
I feel like these could be where we are in the industry, where are we located. Yes, I feel like for me, if you start thinking, like if I'm Colombia, again, I don't know Colombian industry, I'm Colombian, but maybe the portfolio has to look in a specific way and it has to do specific things to be
I see.
So, and I feel like then when we start talking about Canada and again, US, we could be a little more flexible. About that. So I feel like it's really important to identify those different things. And again, I'm making this up, but I feel like this is maybe something that it could be. But okay, I want to give us Vivek, I know that you have another question, but I want to give us at least 7 minutes for the small groups. And this is something that I'm taking from hand presentation to what I asked the participants to bring in. And I want to touch about what is 𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗍 and how is this reflecting in your portfolio and your case study. So this is exactly what we're going to do. So someone is going to show their portfolio. They're going to skim through it, and the viewers, the participants on the side, they will decide how 𝗪𝗂𝗏𝗍 it is. Yes. So something easy, something that anyone can do. And I feel like Han and me, if we still have a couple of minutes, I'm going to put us in one of the ease groups. And as everybody know, this is what it takes me usually the longest, because this is not an easy UI for Google. But let's see if I can multitask while I do this. So next Saturday, there is not going to be like a group participation space. I'm going to have a live stream with Juan. He's a tech recruiter. He's going to show us what is he looking into portfolios when he's skimming portfolios and matching candidates. Okay, see, this is so complicated. It's not an easy thing to do. Okay, let me do this fast. So next week, we are not going to have a group space like this that is open. It's going to be a live stream, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where are you, Han? Oh no, you are in the other group. Let's put you in here. I feel like this is good. So next week again is just going to be a live stream. So let's make sure that, I mean, you can be here. why I'm doing this, because I'm giving 2 weeks for people to work about these case studies that we are going to be presenting in 2 weeks. So that's why next week we don't have a group like this. Okay, we're going to give 5 minutes. One of you is going to show your portfolio, and we are going to see how schemable it is, and we're going to see 4 people who are going to give feedback. Look about hierarchy. I feel like one of the most important. How is people organizing? Can I jump to information? Okay, thank you everybody for this. I hope that you enjoy. Again, Tuesday we have Claudia. She's going to be talking about portfolio for product managers. Then on Saturday, we are going to be having Juan, a tech recruiter. And Ivan surprised us. He is a recruiter. He was giving us some tech. Yeah. And then on Saturday, December, what is that? 5, 7? Now I confused the dates. That's going to be when the participants are going to give us a sneak peek, yes, of their case studies, and we can give feedback. So, Han, thank you so much for this. This was great. I hope that everybody have fun, and see you soon. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I was just saying thank you for having me. I wish I had more time to answer a few questions, but
yeah. I mean, everybody can find Han on LinkedIn, and I will be posting the LinkedIn. So if you want to miss any of the next guest speakers, my LinkedIn or my ADP list is good for that. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, ADP list. If you want to talk
ADP list,
I'm on ADP list.
Yes, that's a good one, definitely. Oh my goodness, I have so much mess. Okay, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Have a great weekend, everyone.